Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to Armchair Experts, Experts on Expert. And by the way, something very exciting about Experts on Expert, you can now follow Experts on Expert as its own podcast. So let's say you have a friend, they like smart stuff. They don't want to hear stupid actors talking about stupid acting.
Yeah.
They don't want to have to weed through our timeline to get to those juicy experts. Recommend to them that they just follow Experts on Expert. There is also a link in the description of this episode if you follow us on Instagram or Twitter. So please, I encourage you to start following Experts on Expert because it's going to become its own thing in January. We're thinking if we succeed at our mission.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Experts on Expert. Today, tell us who we got.
Jerry Buting.
Jerry Buting, you will remember him from Making a Murder. And this is so timely because when we recorded Jerry, we didn't even know there was a Making a Murder Part 2.
Yeah.
Making a Murder is awesome. It's on Netflix. We loved it. We devoured it like
good.
sweet candy bars.
Yeah, but sweet, intense.
Very intense, very sad.
Candy bars.
And also we're sad thinking about it was very heavy.
But it's really well done. It's such a good show.
Yeah, very juicy.
Very juicy candy bar.
And Jerry was one of the two counsel that were defending Steven Avery. Yep. And he's just an incredibly smart, articulate, wonderful man with a very important message to spread about jurisprudence in this country.
Yeah.
We could do a little bit better, is his theory. And I found it very compelling. We got a great system, but I think it could be better. Everything could be better. And if you love Jerry the way I think you will, please check out his book, Illusion of Justice, Inside Making a Murderer and America's Broken System. It's a great read. One quick thing. Attention, Armchair Army. This is definitely by popular demand. I've heard so many loving Chicagoites. What are you guys? Chicagoans? Chicagoans. A lot of Chicagoans saying, when are you going to bring the live show to Chicago? It's one of the greatest cities in the country. I love it personally. And guess what, MFers? We're coming December 1st to Chicago, Chi-Town, the big windy setting of Devil in the White City, which I talk about endlessly.
And Wobby Wob's hometown.
Wobby Wob's, this is a homecoming for Wobby Wob. And so we will announce details, but December 1st, we'll be coming to Chicago. Hope Gibson's is preparing a nice meal for me as we speak. I'll be eating there for sure. Go to our website and we'll have some details about when tickets will go on sale, but that'll be coming shortly, that info. So December 1st, the Chicago Theater. So guys, enjoy today's expert, Jerry Buting. We get support from Quince.
Have you been wearing the Quince linen shirts?
Yeah, I've been wearing them a suspicious amount. Yeah, European linen ones, they're $34, which is genuinely insane for how nice they are.
It doesn't even make sense.
Well, here's the deal. They work directly with the factories, cut out all the middlemen, so you're paying for the actual quality and not some brand's marketing budget. Everything's 50 to 80% less than comparable stuff. I love it because it's all very classic and traditional, and I know I'm going to be able to keep it for a very long time, and the quality's off the charts.
That's true. The style is very consistent. Whatever you get there, you walk down the street, you're going to look good. They have these lightweight cotton sweaters, which I love for when it cools down at night. It's nice drape around your shoulders in the summer and then throw it on when it gets a little cool. And it's not just clothes. They do home stuff, ding, 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 travel stuff, everyday essentials. It's all the same model, quality without the markup.
Make your summer wardrobe easier. Go to quince.com/Dax for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. Now available in Canada too. That's QUINCE.com/Dax for free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/Dax. This episode is supported by Helix. All right, let's talk about something we both really care deeply about, sleep.
It's the most important thing. I've had my Helix mattress for years now, and I genuinely think it's one of the best investments you can make for your home. Mine still feels just like it did when I first got it.
Well, that's the thing. It's not one of those mattresses that caves in after 6 months. These things are built to last. And you know, I'm a side sleeper. I ordered a side sleeper and I get hot, so I have cooling. And I can't tell you how much more comfortable it is to be in there, not sweating and tossing and turning.
Cooling is really important. I've read that you're supposed to sleep a little bit cold.
Mm-hmm.
So I also have cooling. And they have over 20 models. So it's not a one-size-fits-all situation. You just go take their quiz and they match you to what actually works for your body.
Plus, they've got cooling upgrades, which heading into summer, non-negotiable.
Truly.
Go to helixsleep.com/armchair for 20% off. That's helixsleep.com/armchair for 20% off. Make sure you enter our show name after checkout so they know we sent you. helixsleep.com/armchair.
He's an armchair expert. He's an armchair expert.
Jerry Buting, welcome to Armchair Expert. Thank you. You're our first law expert, which is a tasty expert to have because
we love crime stories.
we do.
Do you?
Yeah,
Okay.
we consume a lot of Datelines. My favorite movie genre, if you could call it that, is the courtroom drama. I just love them. So I am deeply interested in jurisprudence.
Good.
So this is a really fun guest for us to have. So you're in town, you're promoting a book, right, called Illusion of Justice, which I started reading last night. Forgive me, I didn't consume the whole book in one night.
It's okay.
But right out of the gates, I can tell you that it is very well written.
Thank you.
Had you done a lot of writing throughout your life?
Well, this is my first book. As a lawyer, you write a lot, and I do trials and appeals. And on appeals, it's all writing, almost all writing. And briefs, you put out 11,000 word briefs all the time. And I figure, okay, so what's a book? 100,000 words or something like that. It's just like 10 briefs. Right?
Sure.
I could do that.
Yeah.
It's a very different kind of writing, though.
Yeah, well, that's what I was going to ask. What is the kind of format for briefs or any of these things that you have to adhere to? Does it teach you like economy of words, or does it give you good writing habits?
It does teach you economy of words because you've got to fit within their word limit. And so it taught me how to edit pretty well. My own written words to be able to fit them within, also to try and avoid legalese. Even though you're writing for lawyers, judges, you want to avoid as much legalese as possible. Make it clear, more interesting. These appellate courts, they'll go home and they'll have 10 briefs.
Oh, forget that.
And, if you don't catch them early, you got to like hook them early, just like anything else, then they turn it off or they don't pay attention. So
Yeah.
I think it helped me in that regard.
Well, like in script writing, if your first 3 pages aren't dynamite, no one's ever getting beyond that. You learn that quickly.
Sure.
There's so much of your job, because I was thinking about your job last night, and Monica and I both went back and visited Making a Murder, which is on Netflix, and it's a tremendous 10-part documentary about the trial of Steven Avery and Brendan Dassey. It's phenomenal. If you haven't seen it, just stop listening to this podcast
And
and go
Jerry
listen.
is a lawyer on that
He's
show.
he's one of 2 lawyers that defended Stephen. Maybe there were more, but at any rate, as I was watching it, I started really thinking about how encompassing the job is. It's certainly not just knowing the law. I was thinking specifically how you have to probably manage the personality of the judge. There's almost dating involved or something. I don't know exactly what to call it, but there's another human being that ultimately has a ton of control over how this thing goes. And you're trying to make them exert your will in some way. There's got to be a lot of psychology behind it and a lot of interpersonal relations that you can't just be right, Is that
I learned
correct?
that. Exactly right. I learned that early on as a brand new lawyer where I had this case where the facts were perfect. The law was perfect. I made my argument. It was an illegal stop, I think. And I lost. It's like, WTF.
Yeah.
How could I lose this? This was so obvious, but it's more than just that. You have to engage the judge personally. It helps to know the judge. But even before you get to a judge, you have to have interrelations and, personal relationships with the prosecutors.
Oh, yeah. I didn't even think of that.
Because a lot of times before a case ever gets to court or before it gets into a serious part of the court, the prosecutor can make or break your case, depending on whether they're reasonable, unreasonable, whether you can convince them that the charge is wrong or the client's completely innocent. A lot of that you can do before you get to the denouement of court.
And is that because they are also always actively evaluating whether they can try this case successfully? So you're trying
ideally,
to...
yes, they should be. The courts are really overworked by and large. Certainly urban areas are very overworked. And so prosecutors often don't have time to really dig into their case and look at it until it gets to the point where they really have to do a lot of work right before the trial's beginning, or maybe right before a big motion to suppress.
Yeah.
And then suddenly they open their file and look and realize, this isn't as clear cut as we thought. And, then they don't like to
Jerry
lose.
just pointed out that
Exactly.
that's going to get ditched. They're going to throw that out probably.
Exactly.
So a large part of your job is being a salesman. Is that accurate?
There's a lot of that. There's also a lot of social work, psychology. I mean, what I learned early on is it's not just the legal issues that you've got to raise. You've got to bring humanity into the courtroom. And that is very difficult when you've got courts that are so clogged that they are just like machines.
Yeah.
Grinding people out, mostly poor people.
Yeah. Yeah. So bedside manner becomes one of your probably most deadliest quill.
It can be.
Right?
Yeah.
And yeah, I just can't imagine that's what you think when you start law school. So right out of the gates, you're from Indiana, is that correct?
That's right.
We're neighboring state, Michigan.
Right.
And I used to detassel corn in Indiana. So
Did you?
Yeah, so
Okay.
I'm quite familiar with your land. But you were in a bit of rural northwest Indianapolis area?
Yes. We actually had a cornfield right across the street, which was great to be able to play in and build forts and all of that.
Yeah.
But it really wasn't very far out from it was like 56th Street, so not that far out from the downtown area.
What did your parents do?
Both of my parents met at Purdue. They were studying organic chemistry. My mother got a master's degree. My father got a PhD.
Mm-hmm.
He then went to work for Eli Lilly's in Indianapolis, world headquarters.
What is it Eli Willy's make?
Eli Lilly's. It's
Lilly's.
pharmaceuticals.
Oh, okay. All right.
And so we got all our drugs for free.
That's great. that's the dream.
Right. But then after he had 5 children in like 7 or 8 years, and realized
my goodness.
he wasn't going to be able to make it on a chemist's salary. And so his boss said, why don't you try law school? Be a patent attorney. We could use a patent attorney. And so he went to night school for 5 years.
Jeez.
Somehow managed to have another child during that time.
He is so horny, your father.
Seemingly so.
Or unlucky, one of the two. Maybe
Right.
he only had sex 6 times in his life. But
So they were very Catholic, so who knows?
right, sure.
But anyway, they ended up having 7 children. He became a patent attorney, and my mother was, stay-home mom working, raising 7 children.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how we grew up. We lived just walking distance to the Catholic school that we attended. Then went to high school at another Catholic school, Jesuit, all boys.
We've had a few guests that are products of Jesuit education, and most of those guests have had a really favorable view of that experience.
Yes, I do too.
You do, right? It can be a real defining moment in your character. To me, it sounds like my worst nightmare, like authority, all these things, but it can yield pretty great results.
They're very good on academics. I grew up in high school in the 70s, and the Jesuits tend to be in the more liberal wing of the Catholic Church anyway. But despite that kind of upbringing, it was right after my time in a Jesuit school that I more or less left the church. I stopped attending, for about 10 more years, through college, law school. That part of it wasn't important to me. I ended up going back to the church eventually, but
To battle your drug problem?
no.
To blame you. Also, real quick, isn't it such a bummer that a chemist can't afford to
7 kids.
Yeah, like that.
Yeah.
They should be making the most amount of money that anyone makes in this country because it's so hard to do to get there.
Yeah, and so necessary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, and they were devising drugs that were saving lives, extending lives, but
And it wasn't
Yet
trickling
he had
down.
to stop doing that and become a lawyer.
It's pretty bonkers.
Really?
So, but I would imagine with a mother with a master's degree and a father with both a law degree and a PhD, I have to assume that education was really valued in the home.
It was, which is why we went to Jesuit school. It was, it was a financial strain to have 7 children, and they put virtually every dime that my father made into their children, and primarily education. So by the time we got to college, we were on our own. I had to work my way through college. They had helped some, but it was, when I think of the dollars right now, it doesn't seem like that much for tuition, but it doubled in my 4 years in high school.
But did you, at a young age, you have this great foreword. It's one of my favorite forewords I've ever read. It tells so much about you in the simplest little kind of metaphor, which is that you loved long distance running. You were not competitive by nature, so you started on the cross country team, but then quickly you left. But you kept with running. You enjoyed that.
I did. I enjoyed that. When you kind of get in that zone and your breathing is at a perfect pace, and you kind of, it's almost like a high.
Sure. Yeah, and you're exerting a control over something, right? Like there's a lot, for me at least, the things like that appealed to me, whereas I could enter this zone that I was kind of in control of, and that was peaceful for me.
Right.
But so when did you develop an interest in law? Was it something like, oh, Dad did this, I'm going to do this? Or had you seen an episode of,
Perry Mason.
That's it. Thank you for pulling that for me. It's been a while since I saw an episode.
A lot of listeners probably don't even know who Perry Mason is.
Probably
anymore.
not.
But he, that was, you can still see Perry Mason on.
Oh, my grandmother's watching him daily.
All kinds of.
Yeah.
But, I always found that interesting. I don't know. I think it really wasn't my father's role modeling that wanted me to become a lawyer, because he was a patent attorney. And I was really not interested in corporate law or civil law or anything of that nature. I like the idea of representing people, helping people,
right?
Who were the underdogs,
right? And good, because that's my question. Did you feel like an underdog growing up? Did you feel like you could have benefited?
I did. I think.
Yeah,
I was the worst athlete of the family.
Okay,
unquestionably. And I went to a growth spurt in puberty where suddenly, I grew so fast that you're gangly and awkward and can't. So that made me even worse, particularly with basketball, which was the national sport in Indiana.
Basketball god country in Indiana.
I think that's the ratio. Yeah. Ranking. So, I think that kind of made me feel a little bit more of an underdog because, my friends who were better athletes, and, we did a lot of sort of schoolyard games and baseball games where we would just get the neighborhood kids together and or play basketball or whatever. And they were always better than me. And so that gave me a certain sense of humility, perhaps.
Yeah. Well, also, if you're the beneficiary of a unfair system, you don't even notice it. You're like, life's awesome. I was born 6'4" and 220. I've got blonde hair. I'm the quarterback of the football team. This system works. But if you're kind of on the outside of the system, right, you do, or at least personally, develop this overweighted sense of justice. Like this is unjust. There's some unjust things. And I feel like, particularly aware of things that were unjust. Do you feel like you were like Terminator looking around the landscape and going like, not fair, not fair? Is that kind of your nature?
Yeah, I think that's probably true. Now, I don't want to oversell it. I mean, when I look back on it, compared to a lot of people, I had a privileged life. I had, 2 loving parents and siblings, and, we were middle class.
Yeah.
But we didn't go hungry, and, we had a lot of privileges, and yet.
But does that matter? Like, is anyone now we can look back and be very aware of our privilege, and it's great to acknowledge it. But when you're in the moment, it doesn't really matter to you that you are higher on the social status ladder than 13 other people. You're just looking at the 14 that are above you. Like, it's very hard to have perspective as a human being that you're doing better than a lot.
Right. And I also grew up in the late 60s and early 70s, a very politically turbulent time. And so there was a lot of injustice everywhere you looked.
Yeah.
And a lot of people fighting to change that injustice. And I really got interested in that too.
Right. The Vietnam protests, the civil rights stuff, a lot of stuff happened.
Watergate. Yes.
Yeah.
All of that corruption. And, that really helped motivate me and ultimately pushed me into the law because, like a lot of people my age, my generation, we were going to change the world, right?
Yeah.
We were very idealistic, and who better could do that than lawyers? At least that was the thinking at that time.
Right.
And when I decided to go into criminal law, which was a big step, when I got to college initially, I signed up as an astronomy major, believe it or not.
Of course, sure.
Which I enjoyed.
Pictures of Kepler and stuff in your dorm room, Copernicus. And
my brother was a really good amateur astronomer. He was able to find all the Messier objects, 110 or something like that, where all these objects that this famous scientist had picked out in the night sky, and he was able to find them all himself. I was never that good.
Yeah.
But when I got to, I think within the first week or two of college, it was pretty obvious to me that this was not my career. I would sit in the classroom and they were very socially awkward. All the other students, they couldn't carry on small talk. And it was like, you guys belong on a mountain alone in the middle of the night.
yeah. The Wilson Observatory.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I decided this would be a good hobby, better hobby for me than a career.
Uh-huh. What did you switch to?
I switched to
English?
forensic studies, which was criminal justice based.
Okay. Because are the three main feeders for law school are generally English major, history. I've heard increasingly anthropology, weirdly. It's all about the reading load, I heard.
Just any liberal arts would do it. But they've tried to broaden. I mean, when I was in law school, one of my roommates was from MIT.
No kidding.
So a lot of different skills can be useful as a lawyer, but a lot of it is reading, no question. I've always had an interest in science, even though I thought I wasn't good enough to make that a career.
Right.
And so one of my niches in my career nowadays is forensic science and challenging experts. And
so of the many, I have a handful of global topics I want to get into with you. And one of them is the kind of NCIS culture we live in, this kind of blind faith in a lot of these forensic technologies that are now kind of, a lot of them being revealed to be utter bullshit. And you lived at the height of that, right? You were practicing law when DNA came about, right?
Yes.
This new magic weapon. You've also seen probably handwriting analysis that was utter bullshit. So just can you help us understand what has happened in the last 20, 30 years of forensics and maybe your estimation of how accurate it is or how much it should be trusted?
Sure. I think DNA was sort of the watershed moment for forensic studies because forensic science, to that point, there's all kinds of voodoo science, some of which is still used in the courtrooms, that was all subjective. The analyst would look at, I'll give you an example, hair comparison, microscopic hair comparison.
Yeah.
It's the most bogus forensic science ever, in my opinion, although bite marks is right up there. But they would take, they would pluck a hair from the suspect's head. They would compare it to the hair found at the crime scene through this microscope. They would try and look. There was no specific number of points of similarity that you had to...
A criteria to meet.
No criteria. It was all subjective. And they would say, this looks consistent with, or sometimes similar to. And then the prosecutors would take that one step further and would try and argue that it was a match,
Right.
And after DNA came out, we realized that wasn't true. Even when they had said that these hairs were consistent, in fact, DNA excluded the defendant in the case sometimes after decades in prison. So that
could even prove it was like a canine hair. They were
well, when people started going back and looking at that, they found that, two experts may have a completely different opinion. You could find hairs on the same head that were dissimilar enough that they would say they were not even consistent.
Right.
And so that was one of I think the first time that people really started to look at, well, wait a second, what is this science?
Yeah. Have you happened to read the book? I think it's called Killing Shepherds.
No.
Oh, it's about this French serial killer at the end of the 1800s and basically the birth of forensic science by this French scientist. Very fascinating.
So handwriting was one of the early ones too. You mentioned that. That came about in the 20s or 30s, and J. Edgar Hoover was modernizing the FBI, or the precursor to the FBI, and created the FBI laboratory, and handwriting was one of I talk about this in my book, how this guy claimed that he could determine with, almost to exclude everybody, that this was the source of this handwriting based upon the way you looped your Y's and crossed your T's and that sort of thing, which was all bogus, of course. But people bought it for many years, and people were wrongly convicted for many years, decades.
Yeah.
And so in 2010, pretty recently, the National Academy of Science came out with this study, the first thorough review of all of the forensic science fields. So ballistics, fingerprints, bite marks, hair, arson, all of those things.
Blood spatter, is that part of it?
Blood spatter. They looked at all of this stuff and they said, well, what are the real scientific basis for any of these? Mm-hmm. And they found that with the exception of DNA, none of them were ever scientifically validated, not even fingerprints. Even fingerprints, there was no one set of criteria of how many points of similarity there must be and how many points of dissimilarity there could be, and yet still find a quote unquote match.
Yeah.
And so they recommended that all of these fields, which, there's association of arson experts and all these individual fields have their own little associations. They recommended that they go back and try and do real scientific validity studies that can be replicable, scientifically valid.
Yeah.
And very few of them have done that in the last, it's been 8 years now.
Yeah. So where are we at now? Like, what does that mean that this stuff is getting thrown out, or it's probably still being in backwater courtrooms being?
It's not even in backwater courtrooms. And what's happened is, to some extent, the labs that used to rely on them no longer do. So, for instance, hair comparison. The FBI just a few years ago decided that they were no longer going to use that. And they went back and they looked at, now this was just in 2015. They looked at like 268 of their cases of their experts who presumably should be the best in the country, the FBI lab. And they studied 268 cases and discovered, reading the transcripts, that 95% of the time their own experts had either misleadingly or falsely represented the results. 32 of those people were on death row, 14 of them executed.
Oh my God.
Now, that's not to say that there wasn't some other evidence in the case, but still.
Now, isn't there an innate flaw in having, considering that there are basically two sides to any court case, which is the prosecution and the defense, to have either side being the one evaluating the information is just probably inherently a bit flawed. Yeah.
Well, are you talking about independence of the analysts?
Well, the notion that the FBI is doing the analysis already, well, they're a part of the prosecution side of this equation at all times.
Precisely. And that is a serious problem when it comes to crime labs in this country, because by and large, they are all organized under law enforcement.
Right.
They're either an actual part of a police department or the State Bureau of Investigation or whatever it might be. So they don't have the independence from law enforcement that they should to come into court and profess themselves as scientific experts who should be unbiased. The other thing they don't do, though, is blind testing. So, they ought to have samples brought to them. They should not know which sample is the suspect.
And which is the
crime scene, and which is just a reference sample they're trying to exclude.
Yeah.
They should just test it. Does it match? Does it not?
The way they audition concert musicians now, it's behind a screen, so you can't have the male-female bias.
Exactly, and it's called cognitive bias, and it's a human trait. We all have it.
Yes,
and you need to take steps to try and minimize that. And one of those would be blind testing by crime labs, but they very resistant to that.
And that was another topic that I really want to hear you educate us on, which is confirmation bias, or any of these biases we have as humans. We were recently robbed. We got ourselves to 100% certainty who it was. I mean, 100%. Would have bet my kids' lives on the fact that we knew who it was. I then embarrassingly confronted the parents. Absolutely airtight alibi. This person wasn't even within 200 miles. Just shocked out of my mind how fucking wrong I was. And then I was reminded, this is why we don't permit vigilantism, because we're not good. Humans are just innately bad at this. And we need really ironclad systems in place to counteract how our brains just work, right?
That's right. And that's why we have all the trappings of due process, including, the burden of proof that the prosecution must make and the presumption of innocence, because it's very difficult to prove you didn't do something. If somebody wants to accuse you of something, they should be the one that would prove that.
Right.
We've lost sight of that, unfortunately, in this country, and too many people jump to conclusions, don't give anybody the benefit of the doubt or the presumption of innocence.
It can also be not malicious, right?
Oh, absolutely.
It's just our flawed human brains that once we lock onto something, we only see things that confirm that.
That's exactly right. Confirmatory bias, they also call it tunnel vision. And police officers often fall prey to this. Although you can train people to be aware of it, what it does is, there's a tendency to look like looking down a tunnel only at evidence that confirms your belief in what happened.
Yeah.
And you kind of ignore everything off to the sides that doesn't support your theory.
Yeah. And again, maybe not even because you're like, oh, I want to exclude anything contradictory. It's just how your brain naturally functions. So
Right.
the fingerprint analysis, to your point, if you're looking for 14 points on the sample that match and you find them, you likely weren't looking for the 35 that don't match.
Right.
You almost can't be doing both things at once mentally.
A better example of that actually is what they call tool mark, firearm and tool mark evidence, which otherwise a lot of people know as ballistics, where they look at a test-fired bullet or shell, let's say bullets, that as they go through the rifle, they have certain marks,
Yeah, the premise is that every rifle is unique in its
right.
Yeah.
And that is not true, first of all.
Well, right. I've always bumped against that. I'm like, they're mass producing some of these guns, a million a year. And
Right.
you're telling me they're not at least 1,000 of them bored identically?
They are. And in fact, this forensic field developed back when they used to hand bore rifles. And there were slight microscopic differences. But as they've gotten to the point of mass production, the only differences you will find are with age, perhaps, little damages and things like
Rust
that, wear and
and
tear.
stuff.
But they'll look under a microscope. They'll compare a test fired with the bullet, let's say at the scene or in the body, and they'll try and line up these marks. But in this field, they can call something a match if only something like 40%, 35 to 40% of the lines even match.
Oh, wow.
Meaning the majority do not.
Yes, right.
And yet they ignore the dissimilarities and say, well, they're dissimilar, but we don't have to consider those.
Yes. And then let's widen out even a bit. Okay. Let's start from this place that maybe I should have started with, which is at least my understanding of our criminal court system is we by design. I see that you really like John Adams, right?
Yes.
Yeah, me too. He's a fascinating person. By design, we have opted to have a criminal justice system that prefers that a guilty person go free to an innocent person being convicted. We have prioritized that, right? Other legal systems have not, right? Where the burden of proof is on the defendant or whatnot.
Right.
Is that accurate?
Yeah, and I mean the John Adams. I quote him in the book just to paraphrase it.
Yeah, because I didn't really understand his quote, to be honest with you. When I read it like 4 times, and I'm like, I don't think I'm getting the message.
You know, it's interesting because I initially used a more modernized version of it and decided that people on the internet are going to tear this apart and say that's not really what he said. But really, what the point was that. You know, it's better in our system. We believe it's better that 10 guilty people go free than one innocent person get wrongly convicted. Why? Because there are so many different ways in which people are guilty of, all kinds of different offenses that you can never catch everybody. You can never prosecute everybody.
Right.
But if you start convicting the innocent, then people will think, well, why should I obey the law? If even being... If even obeying the law and being innocent isn't enough to protect me, then why should I ever?
That's such an interesting counterintuitive deduction of
it
that.
Is.
You're right.
And his
like, fuck it. I could go to jail for doing
That's
something
right.
or not. I might as well do it.
His point is if such an idea as that should take hold in our society, then we're really in trouble.
Yeah, that's fascinating. And I don't want to get sidetracked by this, nor do I want to create a trap for you to step in that you will regret. Is it at all troubling, just to derail a little bit, that our public courtroom is almost predicated on the exact opposite currently? Do you feel like there's been a little bit of shift in the way we administer our social justice that is almost the opposite?
There is. It is troubling. And it's accelerated, I think, on social media.
Yes.
Where you are convicted.
You lose your job first.
Exactly.
And then if you're lucky, there's an investigation.
Right.
And that's if you're lucky. Generally, you don't.
Or even if it's not a job, your reputation is gone because of accusations made on social media.
And if you're an academic and that happens to you, you're not getting hired at another university. That's a wrap on your 30-year.
That's right.
Yeah.
A short war story here. We had a case that went to trial. It was originally my case. My wife, Kathy Stilling, who's also a criminal defense attorney, we worked together, ultimately tried the case. And it was a substitute teacher who, you know what kind of respect they get from students.
I know how much I respected that.
Yes, me too. This poor guy, he's in class and he's got a work to school initiative adult there as well. So an outside person. And he says, well, we're going to do a little study on what it's like for manufacturing process. And so get your desks in circles and we'll start, you color this on the paper and pass it to the next guy. And you want to be efficient and fast. And so they're doing this in circles and kids are, high school kids, they're goofing off.
Sure, they're drawing penises probably on things.
Or scribbling. And so this one girl was scribbling and getting this marker all over the desk. And the teacher comes over, points his arm over her shoulder, says, you're going to have to stay after and clean that up.
Mm-hmm.
The girl next to her says, oh, did he touch your boob?
Oh
boy.
God.
And she says, I don't know. And then the girl says, well, I do. He touched your boob. And then this rumor starts going around and then it ends up at the principal's office. He's accused of a sexual assault. The case goes all the way to trial.
Oh, my goodness.
The police never interviewed the three boys who were in the other side of the circle of these desks looking directly at it.
Yeah.
Who said, no, he didn't touch her boob. And ultimately, he was found not guilty in 5 minutes. And the jury came out and shook his hand and said, we hope you continue your teaching career.
Right.
Which would, of course, would not happen. Because once you're accused of something like that, it ended his career. And it was so sad because the only thing he ever really wanted to do was be a teacher. Both of his parents were teachers.
Oh, my gosh.
So
couldn't you just lie at this point right now and say, but good news, he invented eBay? I feel like I need a silver lining after that kind of a story.
Stay tuned for more Armchair Expert, if you dare.
We are supported by Auto Trader. All right, if you've been putting off car shopping because it sounds like a whole thing, buying your car online on Auto Trader makes it way easier, really. You can shop tons of cars online, compare prices, check financing and trade-in options, all from wherever you are. And if you want to start online and go to the dealership for a test drive, you can do that too, really. What I like is the flexibility. Start online, finish at the dealer, or the other way around. Your info stays with you, so you're not starting the process from scratch. Plus, you're working with local dealer listings, so you've got real people helping behind the scenes. And when you're ready, you can pick up your car or have it delivered. Really. Buy your car online on Auto Trader. Really. This episode is brought to you by SoFi, the all-in-one finance app where you can bank, borrow, and invest all in one place.
Let's talk bank accounts for a second. The average bank savings rate is 0.39% in interest. You're earning pennies on your savings, but it does not have to be that way.
With SoFi high-yield checking and savings, the money barely making moves sitting in your savings account can earn over 8 times the national average savings rate with eligible direct deposit.
No account or overdraft fees, which feels rare these days. You can get your paycheck up to 2 days early, perfect for getting ahead of a bill or grabbing what you need right when you need it.
Plus, get up to a $300 welcome bonus when you sign up with eligible direct deposit. Sign up for SoFi checking and savings at SoFi.com/armchair. SoFi checking and savings is offered through SoFi Bank N.A., member FDIC. Terms apply.
Confidence. It's listening to your gut. It's moving forward, even when the path ahead is unclear. For nearly 160 years, Pacific Life has helped people keep their promises, building confidence for generations. Whether you're confident in your financial future or just beginning to envision it, we're here to help. Ask a financial professional how. Pacific Life, the power of a promise. Pacific Life Insurance Company, Omaha, Nebraska, and in New York, Pacific Life and Annuity, Phoenix, Arizona.
So, yeah, it's really interesting now. And the other thing I want to get into, so that's just kind of like the conceit of our legal system, right? That I think people need to know about, because I don't know that it's common knowledge that is why and how we practice law in this country, that it is to prevent the one innocent from going in at the expense of maybe 10 guilty people. So also walk us through the ethics just a little bit, because my wife and I will get in these wonderful, I'll call them debates for the sake of this, but they're arguments. When we're watching a show, let's say like we watched the OJ documentary, which was fascinating. And she very much objected to the different moves the defense counsel made, let's say by bringing the jury to his house, and they had rehung pictures on his wall, so it appeared that he had more black friends than he maybe had.
Right.
And she felt like that was so unethical and should be illegal. And then I said, okay, but now switch it to it's Steven Avery who you want, because we'd already watched that. I'm like, now imagine that they have an opportunity to give Steven Avery the best possible defense, and it involves that. And it is so dependent on whether you think the person's guilty or not, about whether you think the thing is ethical or not. But I'm always of the position that your greatest ethical command is that you have to give them the very best defense humanly possible, right?
Right.
And explain why that is ethical. Because it can seem from the outside like, oh, let's assume the person thinks the worst, that you're representing someone guilty of murder, they're a monster, and you're doing all these tricks to get this person off. Explain why it is your ethical obligation to do that.
Well, because my role, first of all, is not to judge people, whether they're guilty or not. And I talk about a little story in the book where because of the pressures when I was a public defender, I started taking shortcuts and making assumptions about that when I was wrong and proven wrong. And so the vast majority, it's not like you see in TV where this guy comes in and, pops down this money and says, I'm guilty, you're going to get me off, right? And I'm going to lie in court. I mean, there are limits on what you can do that are actually part of the ethical code. You cannot, for instance, ethically put on perjured testimony, but you can put the state to its burden of proof.
Right.
And there are some cases where if a prosecutor is just being too unreasonable in the way that they are recommending resolving the case, that you have to say, all right, well, then you're going to have to go to trial and prove it. And I can challenge that and point out where there are problems and weaknesses in their case. And oftentimes it's not a question of a complete, not guilty or guilty verdict. It may be guilty of a lesser crime that the prosecutor wasn't willing to give as a plea bargain.
But I think that is the part that some people miss, is that you have an obligation in this system to keep the prosecution as honest as humanly possible, to protect the actual system, right?
Right.
So it's not just about your client. You're also safeguarding the system.
You are, and you have to be careful though sometimes, because sometimes what may be in, particularly when it comes to human relations and that you have with a prosecutor or a judge, you may think, it'd be better for my future cases, my future relations with these people, if I'm not as aggressive in this particular case. And yet you have to focus on the client that's before you. Or on legal issues, you may think, oh boy, if I appeal this legal issue, I could make really bad law, meaning I could lose and then it would apply to everybody.
It would become
it would be a bad move. And yet for that individual client, if it's in that person's interest, you do have to make that appeal and advance that legal argument and try your best, even if you do fail. And so there's more of those kinds of ethical things, I think, that you face more commonly.
And in your long career, I have to imagine you have had clients you've come to hate. Has that happened?
I wouldn't say hate. No, I've had some clients I didn't think were the very pleasant people. But I do try and find the good in people. I mean, that's.
Well, weirdly, this is what actors do. You'll hear them all the time in interviews saying, even if they're playing a serial killer, you can't play a serial killer from a place of this is a monster, because it just will be one-dimensional. You have to actually buy into the fact that you're that person. And of course, no one thinks they are a monster. So it's this kind of mental hurdle you have to go through to play with any kind of depth. And not that you're willingly taking on monsters, but you do, of course, if you have any expectation that a jury is going to see this human being one way, you have to minimally see them that way yourself, don't you?
Right. And what I find with people is that there's a very, very thin sliver of our society that are like sociopaths or psychopaths. Very, very, very small. The vast majority of people, even who have committed a crime, there's all kinds of circumstances. It's like a snapshot of them at a particular time in their life or a particular day when they used bad judgment, often fueled by alcohol or drugs. And it doesn't necessarily, just like you may not wish to be portrayed on your worst moment.
Oh God, yeah.
And me too. And so oftentimes it's a matter of trying to convey that to a judge or to a prosecutor before that this is a human being who made mistakes. He can use some punishment, being held accountable, but you don't need to throw away this life forever.
Yes.
And so I try and focus on what caused this behavior. What is it in your life that turned this person down? There are a lot of times it's people who don't have the kinds of privileges I grew up with.
For sure.
And that was a challenge for me when I first started practicing law. I was a public defender, meaning I was in court representing very, very poor people, many people of color. I had not grown up around a lot of that kind of poverty and grinding, diversity and all of that. And I still had to somehow relate to them in a way that I could then represent them, as well as if I did know all of those problems, I had experienced all those problems. So you do sometimes have to immerse yourself in your client's life. I do get kind of emotionally involved with some of my clients, most of them, even though you're often advised not to.
Sure.
Much like a doctor or a surgeon, you can't, you lose a patient.
You shouldn't date them.
You shouldn't date them, but you also shouldn't like get so emotionally involved. If you're a cancer doctor, I mean, think of how many patients you lose.
Yeah.
But I don't see my practice that way. I do try to get personal with my clients and to understand them. I think I have to understand them in order to be able to represent the best side of them.
So you were at the front line. What is in the zeitgeist right now or being discussed, thank God, is this kind of disproportionate conviction of African Americans. There's a ton of data on it now, right?
Yes.
And if two people get tried of the exact same crime, one's white, one's black, it's just a staggering difference, right? The conviction rate.
The conviction and the incarceration rate is really staggering.
The sentencing is also. Yes. You got to see that firsthand, I assume, as a public defender quite often.
I did. And, in my career, which started in 1981 as a lawyer, I mean, I've seen that was a really difficult time in our justice system. That was during the cocaine, the crack,
right,
and
epidemic,
the disparity that
Reagan's
somehow
war on drugs.
That people in the 80s believed that crack was so much more addictive that therefore we were going to punish it 100 times more than powder, basically.
Yes,
and it was also much cheaper, and so it became the drug of poor people, many people of color.
Yeah,
and they were disproportionately punished as a result of that. That's, I think, where
it
really
just
exploded.
Very obvious about it. They penalized the version of the drug the black folks were using, and they
minimized,
all but decriminalized the version the white people used.
Right.
Yeah. And how when you were in the eye of that storm, you must have been so tempted to just go, you guys, this is just fucking racism. Like, can't you see that has to be. So for someone who's dedicated to pointing out injustice, and that's just such a huge injustice, what was it like to be emotionally going through that so regularly and losing people to that?
It was a challenge, no question. What I think it was more difficult to deal with that in the courtroom on a case-by-case basis, particularly when this other pernicious development of mandatory minimums popped up. Taking away any discretion that a judge had to avoid prison for somebody who had X amount of drugs quantity. And so what I started doing, actually, I became more invested in the policy sides of my career by working through legislators, National Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers. I got very active in them, was on the board. And through those kinds of advocacy groups, tried to influence policy to change, because ultimately that's where it was happening. It was in the legislatures.
Yeah.
But I can't say that I feel like I was very successful. Finally, I think people are the pendulum is starting to swing back, and people are starting to realize that, we need to be smarter on crime than just tough on crime. We've wasted a whole generation or two in the meantime because of these draconian policies.
We haven't, at least historically, been terribly interested in rehabilitation, right? We seem to be very interested in punishment,
right? As
compared to at least a lot of European systems.
Norway.
Yeah. I don't know if you saw that Michael Moore documentary, Who to Invade Next, but he had a great, there's guys hanging by a lake who are killers, but then their recidivism rate is
much lower,
way lower.
Right.
And there's data on it. So it's not even like, it's an opinion. There's just tons of data to support this. So is that something that is frustrating to you?
It is frustrating. And, there was a period of time in the 60s when we focused more on rehabilitation.
Mm-hmm.
But then politicians, frankly, used it to scare people. They found that it was a good way to get votes.
Yeah.
Prosecutors, judges would have these clanging jail cell doors in their ads and, all this like get tough on crime stuff. Whereas other countries, Norway is the best example I can think of. They start from the premise that these people are going to be out at some point, most of them.
Right.
And do we want them? We now have them under our control for a period of time. We are going to try and change whatever it is that brought them here in the first place and make it so that they can succeed in society again when they get out, not just toss them out the door and have some parole agent who's very punitive and ready to lock them up at every moment. Because people they need a helping hand when you get out.
Yeah.
And also America, not only do we have a mass incarceration, I mean, 2 million people are in prison right now. And then there's many, many more who are on parole or probation supervision who have all these restricted rights.
Yeah.
And then there's all the collateral consequences. Once you're a convicted felon, you have doors closed to you that would otherwise have been available.
And the majority of those are drug related, aren't they?
The majority are drug related. There's also a lot of low level, domestic violence and things of that nature where people are held in custody for periods of time. But when it comes to the prisons, the majority are.
The majority is not violent crime, I guess, is the big point.
Well, it's interesting. They, again, politicians will play tricks with the numbers. Some of them will say, in Wisconsin, there's a debate going on in my home state right now about in the governor's race, the Democrats who want to drastically reduce the prison population, which has tripled in the state in the last couple decades. And the current governor will argue, that something like 60 or 70% of these people are violent. Well, but violent in what sense? Not even necessarily for what they're in prison for. That may be a drug offense, but because they had, let's say, a domestic abuse case against them in the past, they may be labeled as a violent
right, that their crime was also included violence when it hadn't.
Right.
And, if I'm a very conservative, I'm hearing this, I would probably be inclined to go like, oh, well, la-di-da, guys. Yeah, let's just let everyone out. We have to deal with crime. And to that, I would say we absolutely do. The question just is, what is the most effective way to actually reduce crime? And it's probably counterintuitive in a lot of ways. Like, what is it? It's $30,000 a year in some states to keep someone behind
or more. Yes.
Or bars. Right. So just even fiscally, if you're a conservative, this is probably a terrible use of resources to be allocating $30,000 a year when you could probably send someone to treatment for X amount. You could also probably get them in a sober living situation. There's all these different things that would actually save money and probably reduce recidivism. Boy, that's a word. That's a tough one for me.
Well, and you mentioned conservatives. That may be the tipping point of why people are suddenly realizing that we need to get smarter. Because in Wisconsin, for instance, for the last 5 years or so, we've been spending more on our prison system than all of the university campuses throughout the state combined, which is insane.
Yeah.
And Texas found themselves in the same situation about 5 or 10 years ago. Texas, red state as you can get, has systematically reduced their prison population while improving the safety of their citizens in smart ways with diversion courts and treatment courts and more realistic sentences.
Mm-hmm.
So there are ways to do it that can satisfy so-called conservatives or people who are, in the past may have been lock them up and throw away the key.
Yeah, 3 strikes, you're out, minimum sentencing, all those things.
Right.
So let's talk about another kind of unavoidable fact of our situation in this country, which is I'm assuming that there has to be just this tremendous incentive to plea out cases, because I have to imagine there's just there isn't nearly enough courts to be processing nearly the amount of people who are arrested daily, right? There's a huge flow issue, isn't there?
There is. And plea bargaining is really the oil that keeps things, the courts from totally collapsing. Everybody has a right to a trial. If everybody demanded that right to a trial, the system would grind to a halt.
Right.
But not everybody, frankly, wants a trial. Mm-hmm. Most people who are guilty admit they're guilty.
Really?
Oh, yes. Most of them have already admitted before they ever come to me.
Oh, really?
They've admitted to the police. Most people who are guilty, it's like, yeah, I screwed up, but what kind of punishment is just?
Right.
And so what prosecutors sometimes will do, there's a game where they'll overcharge with a more serious offense and then plea bargain and say, if you will give up your right to a trial, plead guilty, we will recommend X as a punishment.
Okay.
And if you want to go to trial, there's something called the trial penalty. There's been some focus on recently, which is that if you choose to go to trial, let's say because you really are innocent, and then you lose, the stakes are higher, like staying in a poker match, you might be convicted of a much more serious offense, get much more time than if you had just taken this plea bargain. And particularly with misdemeanors, where people in states that have cash bail requirements, which is still most, people can sit in jail for months at a time, sometimes approaching the maximum sentence that they would get.
Yeah, a lot of people get off on time served, right? Or that sentence ends up being time served.
And many people who are not guilty plead guilty because it's their chance to get out. If you want a trial, fine, but you're going to have to sit even longer for a trial. Or if you plead guilty to this offense, you'll get out today or very soon.
Yeah, so we just had a debate about this, and I'd love your opinion on it, because we were watching The Staircase, and it was getting to the point in, the latter episodes where they basically tell him, you can do time served, just admit that you did it. And I was of the opinion, look at the frailty of the human ego. Like, when you're really evaluating, am I going to spend time with my kids my last 10 years, or am I going to have the, quote, integrity of having never admitted to that? To me, in a utilitarian viewpoint, that's just your ego fucking with you. But I would imagine you might think that's an erosion of something. So imagine you were in that situation. I forget his name from The Staircase.
Michael Peterson.
And really the choice is between being with your family and just having to live with the fact that you admitted to something. Now, granted, I also think he might have done it, but that's neither here nor there. Let's assume he didn't do it. What are your thoughts about that?
I don't even have to put myself in his position because I've had many clients that have been in that position.
Okay, great.
I'll give you one example. A guy who always maintained his innocence, who the Innocence Project worked on and got him his conviction reversed because of these flaws in the trial. And then I was appointed to take over and defend him at trial. Well, by that time, he had spent 5.5 years in prison or jail. And on the verge of his trial, which was for a first-degree intentional homicide, life sentence, the prosecutor offered to reduce the charge down to a negligent kind of offense, homicide offense, that had a maximum penalty of 5 years.
So he's done.
Yeah.
So he can walk out that day, or he can continue to maintain his innocence. And he thought, look, I put my faith in the justice system once. I was wrongly convicted. Frankly, I have a better lawyer now, but I could still be convicted again.
Stakes are just so high.
The stakes are and I thought we had a good case. I thought we could win it at trial. I was fired up. I was prepared and ready to go, but I absolutely understood his decision. At that point, the people that mattered to him knew he wasn't guilty, no matter what he did to try and resolve this case. And
that was kind of my point. It's like you're actually trying to you're overvaluing strangers' opinion of you versus the people in your actual circle. Because the people in your actual circle, they've long either thought you're innocent or guilty. So you're not, you saying that word only has the effect of making strangers think you did something potentially.
And even if you go to trial and win and are found not guilty, there are many people who will still think you're guilty and got off.
Sure. OJ.
Exactly.
It's hard to find a lot of people that would.
Perfect example.
Yeah.
And so, so why risk that for that small of a benefit?
But is that an erosion? Like, I guess there's a similar analogy between like, union work. Like you could make a scenario where you feel like you should break out of this union thing. Like use an example just in our business, like, I go direct this like PSA to support this thing, but I'll be kind of breaking my union commitment. I feel like it's worth it, but am I walking them backwards of what they fought for? Like these kind of ethical things. When someone does cave to the system, to the threat, are they emboldening that side?
There is definitely that concern. And I think that's particularly true with people who are sitting in jail on misdemeanor cases, who often those cases are very weak. There's not a lot of time and investigation put into them because they are only misdemeanors, quote unquote. But people who can't afford their cash bail are willing to just take these plea deals. And so what you happen, it does almost encourage more of the same, because the prosecutors and
it works.
And they know that they can resolve the case and they don't have to spend a whole lot of time on the case, but it's a win for them. It's not like it's a complete dismissal.
Yeah. So I would imagine there's a huge socioeconomic inequality in how the experience in court is, right? There has to be
poor people lose. Poor people lose all the time. That's Steven Avery's quote in Making a Murderer. And there's, a certain amount of truth in that. But one of the things I think that's interesting in The Staircase as a comparison to Making a Murderer is that there you see a very wealthy defendant.
Right.
Who, without, spoiler alert, who did not win despite his wealth and expert witnesses and excellent counsel and all of that. So it's not like anybody has enough money to go up against the juggernaut of the government, let's say. Mm-hmm. The kind of resources that the government can bring to bear in most instances is going to be more than any private citizen can do. But when you are poor and you can't even afford a lawyer and you have no choice on the quality of lawyer you get, and you may end up with somebody like Brendan Dassey got, then, you're stuck. And, I don't blame people for feeling like the system is stacked against them and they don't have a chance because they don't have money.
Is there a practical solution to this inequity?
Well, there is, the last study I saw said that approximately 10 times the resources go to prosecution as compared to the defense. Mm-hmm. And some of it is money. You can improve the situation if you balance out. I mean, we are a system designed on, we're an adversary system of
what
justice.
Does that mean?
That means that what you do is you put advocates on both sides, adverse to each other. And that in theory, if they're relatively equal advocates on both sides, presenting it to a neutral fact finder, judge, or jury, the truth will come out. Mm-hmm. But when the scales are so tipped that the prosecution has much more resource, it's no longer a balanced adversary system anymore. It's a rout, Mm-hmm. There's never a chance to get started half the time. So some of it is resources. If you put more money into defending people who are too poor to be able to afford their own lawyers, that would improve the system dramatically. Mm-hmm. But you also have to couple that with training of those advocates so that it's not just paying them more. They have to be better quality. They have to be trained. They have to understand how to.
Well, it's a bit of a chicken and the egg thing, right? Because to attract the good attorneys, you have to pay them more.
That's right. Yeah.
Right. It's like the teacher. Same crisis with the teachers.
Yes, it is very much. And, and there's the debate of, teachers unions and merit pay versus, longevity and all of that. But so you do have to have certain standards in place so that the people who are getting paid to defend poor people are at least minimally capable of doing it. We have this idea in the law. It's called ineffective assistance of counsel. So you have a right to counsel. You have a right to effective counsel on your behalf. If your lawyer,
that's a powerful word right there. Effective. That's hard to.
It is, but what the devil's in the details when you try and define what's considered effective and what's ineffective.
Yeah. And
so what the Supreme Court has said is that you don't second guess Monday morning quarterback what a lawyer's decision making is. If they make in hindsight, it looks like a bad judgment, but it was a strategy or tactic that they considered and investigated and advanced, then it's protected from any kind of, and the client, frankly, is
if it was a calculated risk that just didn't bear any fruit, well, tough shit.
Right. But that's gotten watered down to such an extent that there are cases that have held that a lawyer who falls asleep in the middle of the trial was not ineffective because, that wasn't a very important part of the trial.
Sure.
I mean, it's insane. We could talk all day about the flaws in the justice system and where we need to improve them, but starting with good counsel on both sides, prosecutors are overworked too. The whole justice system is really...
Well, that's so my wife and I were laying in bed last night talking about the fact that I was going to talk to you. And, I tend to point this out because she's a very optimistic liberal. And I'm occasionally the voice going like, well, yeah, in a perfect world, we'd be doing all these things better. That's from policing to prosecuting to defending to our borders scenario. Like there's innumerable issues this country has to confront, but we do not have unlimited resources. We don't have, so at a certain point, sometimes you have to go like, well, it's not perfect, but it also might be going as well as it can go, considering we don't have unlimited resources. And if you go to other countries, you go, well, a lot more stuff's falling through the cracks there. So it is tricky to evaluate what's a realistic expectation of how well any number of these municipalities or whatever these government systems can function.
Right. And it's a good point. And it's a constant challenge it's one of the reasons, frankly, that the indigent defense system in America has fallen in such disrepair. Indigent defense meaning people who are too poor.
Oh, right. Okay.
To afford a lawyer. They are indigent. And they have a constitutional right to an effective attorney, so that they must be provided at taxpayers' expense. And there's different models, and whether it's salaried public defenders that work on cases, or whether they're lawyers who are appointed at an hourly rate, which is ridiculously low. Wisconsin now is at $40 an hour. It's the lowest in the country.
I keep sincerely, I pay the house cleaner that more.
Sure.
Yeah.
Right. You can't get a plumber to come to your house for a house charge. And out of that, they're supposed to pay their staff if they have any, their rent, their insurance, or all of that before they ever get paid a dime themselves. The average, last study I saw, is over that of overhead, maybe $45 an hour in our state, $60 an hour nationally. So, but one reason that it's so low, and it's been that way for so long, is people charged with crimes don't have the constituency in the legislature to lobby for money for us when there are people that want to put money for education or parks or police or courts, and so it's difficult for for legislators, policymakers to be able to step back and say, this is an important value that we care about in our society, our democratic society, the courts and justice. And we're willing to invest more money in that, even if it doesn't look like there's the immediate return that you would get by having a park.
Right.
Or a swimming pool or whatever.
It's a tough sell because probably the assumption of your average citizen, myself included, is that, the vast majority of those people are guilty.
Right. But,
we don't assume that just, a ton of innocent people are getting drug into court. We would assume that's the anomaly, I think.
Well, but you would be surprised how many, at what point do we accept that the reverse of what John Adams said, which is it's okay to convict some innocent people because we want to really get the guilty ones. So there's been various estimates of how many people in prison today are truly innocent, actually innocent. And it ranges from as low as 1% to as high as I think I've seen 6 or 8%. Let's just look at the low end. There's 2 million people in prison. If 1% of them are innocent, that's 20,000 wrongly convicted people.
Did you see that quick math, Monica?
So fast
I know.
math.
He could have really made a
really
meal
likes
out of
doing
that. Yeah, I love fast math. Yeah, that's very hard to swallow.
I have a quick question.
Yeah. Quick question?
Quick question. Do you feel like most humans are capable of really, really understanding and then really doing burden of proof? Like, are they executing burden of proof? Like, I sat on a jury, and in my experience, when we were deliberating, I was like, this is what's happening. These are the people making the decisions. Because a lot of people were not able to do that and not able to remove their own personal histories, ideas, and all of these things, which I know is human. It's hard to do, but
it's a good question. And it's a real challenge because, after Making a Murderer came out, I had the opportunity to speak with people from all over the world with all kinds of different justice systems and jury system. It's crazy. People are so biased. How do you do that? And we would rather have a judge like we have here. But we have a tradition in our common law history going back to the British system of relying on a jury of peers. And I frankly, very rarely waive a jury trial in favor of a judge. Even if the people aren't real educated, it's better collectively, I think, to have 12 minds picking something apart than one who, as a judge who sees things all the time, might become jaded.
For sure. Right. Well, he starts playing the percentages, or she starts playing the percentages,
right.
I would imagine.
And one of the problems I think we have with jurors who don't understand, it is true, the presumption of innocence and the burdens of proof are not sort of things that you use in your daily life. So, and for instance, another one, it will take a defendant's right not to testify.
Yeah, exactly.
What happens if you're a parent and your kid comes up to you and your kids are fighting and it's like, he started it. No, she started it, and back and forth. You want to hear both sides. And then you weigh them against each other and decide which one of your kids is lying.
Probably both. But,
and probably both. But that's often the case. It's somewhere in the middle. But in court, you're not supposed to do that. You have this artificial scale where you are supposed to look at the state's evidence and see, does that convince you beyond a reasonable doubt, rather than weighing it against. And so that is different than what you normally do in life. But I think it can be done if you have a judge who cares enough about the system that can instruct them in a way that people understand. And it starts with jury selection. There's a judge who's now in retired or senior status, federal judge in Iowa. He started off his jury selection in this manner. He would get up off of his bench, walk down to the defense counsel's table, say nothing, shake hands with the defendant, turn and look at the jury and say, ladies and gentlemen, or members of the jury, I just shook hands with an innocent man.
Oh, that's powerful.
Wow, yeah.
Now, if any of you here can't apply that same principle, then don't be ashamed. Just raise your hands right now. And this may not be the right jury for you. And then he goes on, you need to convey these principles in a way that people can understand.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it kind of connects more on an emotional. To witness the boss of the courtroom shake the hand of the accused is way more powerful than probably your explanation of.
It is. And I also think that it should be mandatory viewing for every juror while they're waiting to be picked to watch 12 Angry Men. Which I don't know if you've seen. It's a movie from the 50s with Henry Fonda. And, just to see the dynamics of how things go on in a jury room. You need to respect individuals' opinions when you're in that jury room. And one of the most difficult things it is I think, in my whole practice is jury selection, because it's so complex. First of all, you're not picking jurors. You're picking ones you don't want.
Right.
You're trying to deselect those. But you're trying to balance that against all of these other psychodynamics of social interactions. Who's going to be the strong one? Or two or three who are going to influence and make these others change their mind. Because when you get 12 people together in a room, particularly when they're originally strangers, it's very, very difficult to predict that.
There's another ethical pitfall potentially in juror deselection, right? We listen to this great More Perfect. Do you listen to that podcast?
No, I should. Though.
You would love it. Yeah, it's the history of the Supreme Court, like very profound decisions that changed everything, cases. Yeah. And one of them is jury selection, which is if you are a good attorney, you're going to be using racial stereotypes. You're going to be doing things that in real life would be unethical, yet are almost required of you to provide a great defense for your...
See, I would disagree with that.
Okay, please tell me.
Okay, because I think that there's a number of studies now that have said that when you try and use stereotypes to pick juries or to deselect jurors, it just doesn't work. Because there may be certain cases where that might be true, particularly if you want to use a racial stereotype, let's say, and you want people of color in, for whatever reason, I'll pick that person over, or I'll keep that one rather than another.
I mean, on OJ's trial, I'm just throwing every white person off I can if I'm the lawyer.
Well, when you have a case where the issue really is you want people to be able to understand, to be really peers of your client, to understand what they go through and understand the distrust of police and historically the way that they have, used race against people like your client, then that might be somewhat worthwhile. But on the other hand, you find let's take a sexual assault case, for instance. It's a little bit counterintuitive, but in fact, middle-aged women, mothers, are the best jurors in those kinds of cases.
For the prosecution or the defense?
For the defense.
That is very counterintuitive.
And the worst are middle-aged men who are fathers. Mm-hmm. And I'm talking about, let's say you have a teenage 14, 15-year-old girl making these accusations, and for various reasons you think that she's fabricated it, she's in trouble, she's trying to get out of trouble and blame someone else, whatever it might be. The men tend to hold their daughter up on a pedestal, and whereas the mothers who have seen their own daughters lie and have seen all the peer pressures and things that make teenage girls say things, mean girls, whatever, they're much more discerning and skeptical.
Interesting.
And so there's an example where a stereotype doesn't work.
Right.
And it takes a little while and experience to be able to, in your career, to be able to get to that point.
Yeah. So I want to talk about one of to me, the most heartbreaking aspect of Making a Murder, which is Brendan Dassey.
Sure.
That was almost too much for me to even consume because,
yes.
and again, I don't know, have you happened to see the confessions on Frontline?
Yes, I did.
Oh my God. Another one that I just could have cried for 2 hours. In a nutshell, they think they've found this guy who they think murdered his neighbor. He is a very docile sheep. After 9 hours in an interrogation room, he admits to something he didn't do. They then test his blood to find out it's not him. So they go back to him and they say, well, we know someone else was there. Who was it? And they badger him for 8 hours. And then he implies another guy. And that guy, too, is a helpless lamb. And then they end up putting 5 or 6 guys in prison. Then they finally find the real killer. And then they just sew it all together, all through these confessions. And prior to me seeing that, I would have said, well, no one would confess to something they didn't do because I wouldn't do that. But I also am an empowered 6'2" dude who had, there's all these things that I would not have thought of. And I don't think there's anything more heartbreaking than this interrogation scenario that happens around the country. And
right.
Just in Brendan Dassey's case, seemingly some mental impairment too, which I would just imagine right out of the gates, there's no way you can unleash.
Well, it's fairly commonplace. And, people say, how unusual is that? Unfortunately, Brendan Dassey's experience is utterly commonplace. And probably something similar to it happens almost every day in this country. The whole idea that, I don't know how many parents I have had come to me and say, they took my kid out of class and brought him down to the principal's office, and the police are there, and they interrogate him, and no one calls me, and that's not legal, is it? Well, yes and no. It's not going to mean the case goes away. You can argue it in court and try and convince the court that there was a coercive confession, but that's just the tip of the iceberg. But then when you employ we have this technique that America is really like the last English-speaking part of the world that even uses this technique. It's called the Reid technique, R-E-I-D, named after a guy who developed these psychologically coercive techniques only after the U.S. Supreme Court, believe it or not, it took him until 1936 to rule that you couldn't beat confessions out of people.
Oh, okay.
And once they finally ruled that, then it was like, oh, no, now what are we going to do? How do we get confessions out of people?
How do we get the answer we want?
Yeah. And so they came up with these techniques, and it's based on all these flawed sort of pop, social science that's all been debunked. The theory that for instance, that police officers are better human lie detectors than ordinary people. when that's been proven not to be the case. And so what they do,
I would almost imagine they're worse because they get lied to more than most people. So they're actually more expecting of a lie.
yeah, more suspicious. So what they do is when they make up their mind and that the person they're talking to is lying, is the suspect, then it becomes this interrogation technique where they're taught not to accept denials. They are taught that they can lie.
Right. That's the part that
that's
seems
troubling. They can lie about the evidence. They can say, Dax, you're lying to us. We know you're guilty. We got your fingerprint on the cash register.
They can say they have a video of you that they don't have, right?
They can say anything they want that they think will convince you to tell the truth.
Now, if someone says they have a video of me doing something I haven't done, and I say, well, I know I haven't done it, but they fucking have a video that's at least convinced them. It's certainly going to convince a jury. I'm going to go down for this regardless.
Well, here's the thinking. You're particularly if you're a poor person of color, recent immigrant status or something of that nature, and you're thinking, oh my God, they say they got my DNA or they got my fingerprint. Who are they going to believe? This guy? Or me,
the marginalized member of society.
Exactly. And then this cop is saying, look, you we'll go to bat for you. You can make it look however you want, which is what happened with Brendan. Mm-hmm. We know you're not really, he made you do this. He forced you into all of this. But we know what happened. You just need to tell us. And ultimately people then confess falsely. Until DNA, most people believe, just like you, that why would anybody confess to something they didn't do?
Right.
And then studies, when enough people were exonerated, and they started looking, well, how many of those people confessed? Well, about 25% of them had falsely confessed. And when you took a subset of juveniles, it was about 43% falsely confessed. And so then you start looking, well, why? What's going on in those rooms? Most of these interrogations aren't recorded like they were with Brendan.
Mm-hmm. That was new, right? That law had just...
That law in Wisconsin just changed 6 months before that. I talk about that in my book, how that came about. That was a real battle I fought for years. But still, in this country, about half of the states do not require the police to record their interrogations. And so all of these things happen outside of the jury's view. They don't really understand. And frankly, the sad part in Brendan's case is you, the viewers of Making a Murderer, saw more of his interrogation, more parts of his interrogation that were important than his own jury did.
Oh, that's
so his own jury never saw his mother come into the room and say, they got to my head and start recanting immediately.
Yeah.
So
it's so heartbreaking. It seems to be the most malicious of all these different things that could happen
It is.
And I don't think anyone also even takes into account that none of us have ever sat in a room for 8 hours with adult. You just can't really probably even imagine what the mental strain of being bullied for 8 hours and what you just want out of that fucking room at some point. Like your immediate goal probably supersedes your long-term goal.
That's right. And particularly what they found is sort of a confluence of the techniques being psychologically coercive and tricky, and the subject being vulnerable in some way or another, whether it's youth or mental capabilities, or sometimes, in fact, very often both, as in Brendan's case, where...
And again, very marginalized status in general in society, I'm sure, has to...
Right. And lack of experience with the police. And if you've never been, if you're sort of street tough and you've been in front of police before, it's... you're smart enough to say, I'm not talking, first of all.
Yeah.
I want a lawyer here. But there is hope. I don't want everybody to take the Brendan Dassey experience and think that there's no hope, because that scenario can be changed if people want it to be changed. And so in California and in Illinois, they have now passed laws that prohibit interrogation of youth under a certain age, or maybe in certain types of cases, like in Illinois, any sex or homicide case, 15 or under, you have to have a lawyer present.
From the get-go.
Mm-hmm. And similar in California, Jerry Brown signed a law recently. Advocates think it should be higher, 17 or 18, but we're making baby steps now. If it's 15 or younger, or 16, whatever it might be, you just need to protect people Because the thing to keep in mind is, in most instances, when somebody's wrongly convicted, that means that if there was a crime at all, the real perpetrator got off.
Yeah, that's another thing people blow right past when they think about that.
And the Steven Avery case was a perfect example of that, because in his first wrongful conviction, when he spent 18 years in prison for a rape, the real perpetrator, who should have been
did rape again, right?
Did rape again, and was a suspect in a homicide in North Carolina that was never proven, but who knows however many crimes that he did. And, you multiply that by 20,000 around the country.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people's lives who are ruined, and perpetrators who are getting off and committing additional crimes.
Yeah. Tell me about your book. Tell me about why you wrote it and what it was that you were hoping to get across or help move the pendulum in one direction or another.
Well, I feel like I've been lucky enough to have an amazing career with all kinds of interesting cases and experiences. And I'd always wanted to write a memoir of some sort. After Making a Murderer came out, it seemed like this was the right time.
Has it been a little bit interesting to you to see the appetite that Americans have for this topic? Like, we've had a lot of successful now.
Yes.
Docudramas of, involving.
Very much. And the thing that was a little bit surprising to me was that my co-counsel, Dean Strang, and I became these heroes.
Well, that's my last question. I'm going to talk about
Okay, we'll talk about that.
Yeah.
And when we were just doing our job, and there's lots of other people like that. And partly what I hope to do with this book is it's a little bit of the making of a criminal defense lawyer. What I went through. So I talk, certainly about Making a Murderer in the book, but I also use other cases I've had where there are similar flaws of our justice system, and I use that to illustrate what's going on and why. And I have suggestions at the end of ways we can try and individually and collectively improve our system. But I also really wanted people to understand that criminal defense attorneys can be ethical, honest people of integrity that have an important role in our justice system, because that's not the way Hollywood, frankly, has portrayed criminal defense attorneys for a long, long time, really almost since Perry Mason days. And there's been some interest in doing a television series based upon my book. There's been a pilot written and based upon a husband and wife criminal defense attorney. You and Kristen could be in this.
Oh, here we go. Like, we can package this
illusion
whole thing.
of justice. Yeah. And, the idea that it would portray a criminal defense attorney as somebody who is important for all of these reasons in holding up not just the individual that they're defending, but the whole system of justice.
Well, yeah, I was going to say, I think that's the part people miss, that it's not actually solely self-serving to that client. Is, again, you are the co-pilot of the legal system. You're our collective representative, that we always do have a presumption of innocence and that those burdens of proof are met. And that's to protect all of us if we should ever find ourselves in a crazy situation.
Yeah. I mean, to borrow the phrase of one of the associations I belong to, we are liberty's last champion in many ways. We are there defending the individual against the government. And we have some strange bedfellows these days with libertarians.
Sure.
Who believe government is encroaching too much. Antonin Scalia, one of the most conservative Supreme Court justices, believe it or not, is probably one of the best for the criminal defense field of my lifetime.
Yeah.
Because he believed that he really strengthened the right to counsel, how important it was, the right to confront your accusers in court. It went back to what the founders believed. So what I'm trying to do in this book is, I think, change the mindset of people about our criminal justice system and the role of a criminal defense attorney. And one of the things that's been most rewarding to me from this whole experience of the notoriety of Making a Murderer is the young people who've written to me and said, I'm really interested in the law now.
Yeah.
And particularly criminal law. Because I'm at a point in my career where I'm seeing a horizon at the end point.
Sure.
And I look back and I see all this underfunded. It's not a sexy position that people want a career that's going to be interesting. They're going to work hard and not going to make a lot of money. And so it's like you look at It's like in baseball. You know, you look at your farm system and it's kind of thin.
Yeah.
You need to restock it.
Yeah. Well, there was a great documentary called Hot Coffee. Did you happen to see that?
No.
And it was largely about civil lawsuits and how successfully corporations have been at convincing all of us that all these lawsuits are frivolous.
Oh, I am familiar with this.
And tort reform and all these things that have passed.
The McDonald's hot coffee spilling.
Which is total bullshit. The story that I had been told, you know, this woman just spilled coffee on herself and walked away with $3 million. That is what I carried around for 25 years. And that was not the story in any shape. Right. But they successfully convinced us of that. And the point they made in that documentary, which is one that you're making now, that I think people need to be really mindful of, is that we have three branches of government, and you, the citizen, has nearly zero sway over the other two. You're not going to get a bill passed through the House. I don't care how many times you call your representative. But there is this last place, especially with civil lawsuits, where you can challenge General Motors. You can make them meet you in court. And if they've done something that is unethical or dangerous, that you can still mano-a-mano with these megaliths, be them government agencies or huge corporations. It is the last place in our system where a citizen can challenge injustice.
Right.
And they try to erode that. Corporations try to erode that actively. And so do, you know, all kinds of entities.
Right. And I use this as an example in my book of where people can make a difference is not just as a litigant against some big corporation, but as a juror. Mm-hmm. You know, people hate that jury summons when they get in there. How do I get out of this? Right.
Yeah.
Doesn't pay any money. It's boring. You sit around all this waiting. There's a lot of waiting time, but it's the one chance as a citizen that you can directly impact one of our most important, the judicial branch. You know, you're actively involved and your voice is heard and people will listen to what you have to say. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, I really wish people wouldn't look at it like it's the root canal that they don't want to have.
I'm shamefully in that category. I'd rather shovel your driveway for a whole winter. But that's a great thing to remember and something that I could certainly do better on. Okay, my last question for you. I've had you for a long time and I appreciate that. Were you shocked at all by Dean's huge sex appeal? Did that come as a surprise to you? My wife,
your wife,
is in love with him in all ways. She also likes you, but you're more in the category I'm in. You and I are stuck in this category, and Dean really is at the forefront of her all of her carnal desires.
Well, you know, your wife is responsible in large part for this enormous internet heartthrob sensation for both of them, because someone did this meme of they took a picture of us actually at a very depressing part of the trial. Was at the verdict press conference, and they put hearts around it and girl crush and all this, and then she retweeted it with a quote like, "I'm going to get a locker in 2016 just so I can put this up on it," and it got retweeted millions of times. And you know, it was really surreal. There was, I forget if it was Glamour or BuzzFeed, something where they
BuzzFeed. There's been a million.
Oh, there are these polls like, you know, are you a Dean
or a Jerry
girl? You know,
and Team Jerry, Team Dean.
You know, and
was that fun for you? And did it irritate your wife?
Dean straying in the sheets, Jerry buting in the streets.
Oh, that is fantastic. That's fantastic. And I also even saw like there's a whole like style revolution based on you guys, right? Called like normcore. And there's these people who are obsessed with how you dress and they're mimicking how you dress. I mean, I can't imagine a more surreal event to happen to somebody, right?
To a lawyer.
Yeah.
Not to like an actor.
Yeah. Trying a case in northern Wisconsin. I mean, how do you even digest all that?
It was very strange. I mean, a lot of it was very funny. I mean, people had just a lot of fun with it, and I tried to be good natured about it. And you know, Dean was
that's hard to do.
Was
more
it? Like 2-1 in favor of Dean as the sex symbol. But I had my followers.
Look to your right. This is a poll they did in a magazine if people would want to date me, and 72% said no. So I've been there with you.
Okay.
So. But as the point I made is 28% want to date me. That's pretty darn high.
That's exactly right. It's all a matter of your perspective.
Yeah, that's a lot that's a lot of bodies.
To have all these young, beautiful women, like unsolicited, was like, where were you all when I was young and single?
Yes.
Groupies that would hang out like we were rock stars coming out, on our shows. It was amazing. And I still don't quite understand why. What is it?
I do. There's a chivalry to it. There's a valiant nature to defending the weak. There it is a very
that's what superheroes do.
Yeah, it's like what knights are supposed to do if they're living by the code. I can definitely see where like protecting the downtrodden is very attractive. Now, was your wife able to have a great sense of humor about it?
She was good natured about it. Yes, very good natured. She said, "I saw that in you long before they did." So,
yeah, that's what my wife says. Get in line.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
You guys are. I got on at the ground floor. Y'all are catching up.
She was good natured about it, and the groupies didn't bother her. She went with me on some of the speaking tours when we went to Australia, New Zealand. There was this one really cute couple of girls that hung out for an hour after the show to wait for us, and they greeted us with these homemade T-shirts, very nicely done, where they had both of them. It was called Justice Warriors. And there was a picture of Dean and I on the shirts, and I was like, so that was fun.
Yeah. I hope that you were able to enjoy that, because I do think, I can't imagine you got paid for the Steven Avery case in any capacity, right?
Well, we actually were paid out of the settlement that he got from his civil rights case.
Oh, okay. But that was pending while you signed on, right? There couldn't have been an expectation of getting paid.
No, what happened was that he settled his $36 million lawsuit for $400,000.
Oh boy.
And then his civil rights lawyers took their expenses, and there was a total of like $240 left. That was split between Dean and I. I had 100,000. He did 120, and then
because of his sex symbol status,
exactly.
He wanted to
we had to negotiate
commensurate with his sex appeal.
He also took on the risk of other expenses. His law firm was more capable of doing that. But when we figured out the hours, Dean figured it out. There was something like $9 an hour.
That's pretty good. That's a pretty good living.
But it wasn't the money that we took the case for,
right?
And it's not like Netflix paid us a penny either.
Yeah,
I mean, that wasn't part of.
That's why I'm saying I'm so happy to see that there was some kind of downstream reward that was unforeseen, and it's rare that someone does then get rewarded in some capacity for having done the right thing. It's kind of life affirming and encouraging.
It is. It's been very encouraging. Like I said, especially when young people are interested in my career as a career choice.
Yes. Well, as I said, I began reading it last night, Illusion of Justice, and truly it's a very fun read. Like it's just very well written. I told you that before we even sat down, that I was shocked to see you were such a natural writer, but it's really great. I assume you actually wrote it.
Yes.
Yeah. You can tell.
I had a very good editor, though. I'll tell you that.
You did.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
And that helped shape a lot of the structure and organization.
And did you enjoy it? Will you write more books?
I hope so. This was interesting. It was a crazy time in my life where I was flying all over the world doing these talks. And I did a lot of the writing on airplanes and in hotels, frankly. All of the source material was online in this case, because everybody put all the transcripts and documents, most of them anyway. I had some that didn't make it into the court process, but it was easy enough to be able to travel and write. But it is hard when you're also practicing lawyer, which I am, with real cases that are ongoing, to say, oh, I'm going to work on my own personal book now instead of my client's case.
Right.
It's a challenge. So maybe I will do some more writing. I hope to, but I can't
juggle both.
I can't juggle both. I would need to do less of law practice in order to write more books.
Right. Well, I wish you a ton of luck, and I'm really glad there are folks like you that are so smart and so willing to come to the aid of people who need your voice. And I hope we talk to you again.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Jerry. And now my favorite part of the show, the fact check with my soulmate, Monica Padman. ain't nothing but a fact check, baby. Too low down G, so we crazy. Death row is the label that pays me. Unfadable, so please don't try to phase me. Back with the facts at hand.
Oh.
Monica is checking that my man, she's understanding. I don't know, I went off the rails at the end, but boy, my favorite part of that song, I've talked about it on Twitter a couple times, but my favorite part of that song, it's so interesting. They basically in the song, they kill a bunch of people and then they switch their minds back into freak mode.
Okay.
Like right after. In the song, they're about to make some bodies turn cold.
Oof.
But then they switch their mind back into freak mode and then they go to a hotel with some gals. And I just thought that was a very quick transition from murder to lovemaking.
Too quick.
Yeah, very, very quick.
Too fast.
You're not a fan
I don't
of,
like
of
that.
murder followed by lovemaking?
No.
You're so traditional.
A stick in the mud. Okay, yeah. So Making a Murderer season 2 is on right now on Netflix. You can watch it.
I'm really pumped for us to start that.
Me too.
Yeah.
So you talk about the birth of forensics, and there was a book you said about it, and you said it was called Killing Shepherds. It's called The Killer of Little Shepherds,
Okay.
a true crime story and the birth of forensic science by Douglas Starr. Ugh, that's kind of a terrible title considering
Well, and when you
your
rated
last
it,
name.
well, but there's an H in there.
I know, but if you're just saying it,
That's true. Killing of Little Daxes. I wonder if that was the working title.
maybe.
Yeah, it's a gruesome read. If you gotta like it gruesome to like that book. 'Cause
Really?
It's horrific what you could get away with back then before there was telephones and
Ugh.
police departments that spoke to one another.
I mean, yeah, you could just do anything.
You could go on
wanted.
a murdering spree here in Los Feliz and then just go over to Silver Lake the next day and no one would know.
No one would know.
No.
Yeah. Jeez. Well, one thing I wanted to say is after talking to Jerry, but also after having been on a trial.
As a juror, not as a litigant or a defendant or a prosecutor.
Correct. As a juror.
Yeah. She
Have
was
you seen that 30 Rock?
Willy good juror. No.
It's a very funny part in 30 Rock where they're trying to say they wrote a script called The Rural Juror and no one could say it. And
Rural juror.
It is so funny. That show is so brilliant. It's
Oh,
crazy.
really was. Pound for pound, joke for joke.
So good. Anyway, I sat on a jury and I walked away from that experience thinking all of my friends who are busy with their jobs and get the summons and throw it in the trash or ignore it are not my friends anymore.
Oh, Jesus.
And
Okay.
I don't like them.
Uh-huh.
Okay? Because it's so important.
I know.
I'm talking to you.
I know you are.
I'm
I think
talking
everyone
to my mom.
I think
Kristen.
everyone knows that you're talking to me.
I'm talking to a lot of people, not just you.
Now, I know it says in the Constitution that we're entitled to a jury of our peers,
Yeah.
but I actually think there should be professional jurors. I really do.
We've talked about this before, and I agree with you in theory. In practice, I don't think it's possible.
You don't?
There's too much.
I have to imagine the expenditure of mailing all those notices, enforcing all that thing, having all the people come in, telling them to leave, telling them to come back, throwing them out of the thing. I can't imagine that would be more efficient than having LA's got 100 full-time jurors. I mean, it's not like there's...
No, but there are cases
But the courthouse is only so big, right? There's how many courtrooms are in the...
There's a bunch of floors, maybe...
A billion?
There's a billion floors.
Okay.
And then within that, there is
And
a
then-
billion rooms.
And then within that...
There's
okay.
No, there's a lot. That's why most of these cases in general get like plead out.
Well, of course. Yeah,
It's like there's not enough resources to even get what we have now.
Even 10% of the cases brought could never be tried.
Yeah.
Yeah. And,
So that's the problem with professional jurors. And also it'd have to pay so much that people would choose that as their job.
but I think it should also, we have an abundance of fucking lawyers in this country and people going to law school. And I think part of their education, like you do a residency as a doctor, I think they should have to, that should be the pool of people that have to go sit on juries.
They can't.
As their class. It's part of their credit. So they got to be jurors.
Oh, you mean...
Because they know the law.
Right, but that is not even close to the amount of people that it would require. It's just a numbers issue. I think in theory it's great because you do need people who know.
That can't be outfoxed. Sorry, a Mack truck just crashed into the house.
That was another Foley.
Oh, yeah. You know what it is? Guys, I don't want to make anyone... Oh, my Jennifer.
Oh, my God.
I don't want to make anyone uncomfortable, but I've had a kink in my neck. Do you know I've had this kink in my neck?
Tell me.
Oh, there we go.
Oh, wow.
Oh, much more fluid now.
Good,
okay. I've been gotten by that trick before where someone hides a water bottle in their hand and then they keep, like the friends of mine that have succeeded in tricking me, they're masters because they act like their neck's been hurting for like 15 minutes before this.
Slow burn.
A lot of foundation they lay, a lot of track they lay. And then they get that water bottle behind their neck and they go, and they crack that. And I've had a full-fledged panic attack more than once where I thought someone broke their own neck right in front of me. I was expecting to see their head just fall to the side.
You know what's very upsetting? Like, I don't think I would even notice.
Oh, jeez. Oh my God. You know what's interesting is you and I, we found are so different in that when we watch things, I immediately pinpoint different things about the person's anatomy.
Yeah.
And you don't even see it. Some of these things.
Even when you're pointing it out.
It takes a lot of pointing before you recognize. And I was watching TV with my mom the other day who was in town and I realized where I got it from because you can't watch a frame of anything without her going, is that guy wearing eyeliner? What's going on with the tone of his forehead? Like she is all over what's happening with people's faces.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. And my parents don't do that at all.
Well, it's just all white people on TV. Maybe they assume they look, they just can't see. Because like when they're watching Friends, they realize that there are 6 different people on the show.
No.
Okay.
No, they don't even do that in life. It's actually, I love that about them.
Yeah, you're proud of that of yourself.
I'm really, well, I mean, I don't know if I'm proud of it of myself because it leads to weird stuff. Like I'm just not observant. Like I would not know if you actually cracked your neck open or something.
What if my head fell sideways to my shoulder?
It would take me 6 minutes.
Oh yeah, it's so interesting.
but I like that I grew up in an environment where like people were not picked on ever. And it was not like they are against picking on. It's like they're not seeing it. Mm-hmm. So they're never pointing it out and they're never doing that. And I really like that.
Yeah, I think that's great. But I also, and that's where you and I always argue when I'm pointing this stuff up. It's like, I'm not even being mean necessarily. I'm just like being observant. I'm like, oh, that guy's earlobes are 7 inches long. That's
sometimes I think it's mean because the barometer is if they were sitting there and you said it, would it hurt their feelings? And I'm going to say 90% of the time, yes.
You can't watch TV that way where you're assuming everyone that's on TV is in your living room.
I watch TV that way.
Okay, so you're saying like if you turn on a news channel, we know which one, and you think it's preposterous what they're saying.
Sure.
That you shouldn't have that opinion because if they were in front of you, you would not want to say that to them.
No, if they were in front of me and they were saying that, I would totally say whatever I was saying to them.
You would. I just made a bad point. Terrible analogy. 1 point, Monica. Love 15, Monica.
We just learned about that 2 Thursdays ago. So anyway, just please go serve your jury.
Yeah.
Okay.
You should.
Jury duty. It sucks, but it's also sort of interesting. Well, I actually found it very interesting. And I just want smart people on those juries.
Yeah.
They're making all the decisions and it's scary.
Yeah. Someone in a real person's life is hanging in the balance, as they say on court dramas.
So the conviction and incarceration rates for white versus black people. A 2014 University of Michigan Law School study.
Ooh, really quick. Great university. I'm going to believe this study.
Great university. 2014, so 4 years out, but still. Found that all other factors being equal, black offenders were 75% more likely to face a charge carrying a mandatory minimum sentence than a white offender who committed the same crime.
Oof.
75%.
It's almost twice as likely.
The United States currently houses the world's largest prison population with an incarceration rate of roughly 666 inmates per 100,000 people. Among whites, the rate is 450 inmates per 100,000 people. The incarceration rate for Black people is over 5 times higher at 2,306 inmates per 100,000 people.
5 times higher.
That's rough. That is so rough.
Yeah, and you know the thing about this, I think it's sometimes, and I don't agree with this opinion, but I've heard people dismiss these as going, oh, well, Black people are committing more crimes. They deduce that from it. But there's also a ton of data. Maybe you have some on the burner right now, which is even when they get tried for the same crime with the same evidence, the conviction rate is just dramatically higher.
That was the first part.
Yeah.
75%
Were you listening?
Were you listening? 75% more likely to face a charge.
Well, that was for a minimum sentencing. But even if 2 guys get tried with, jaywalking, one's white, one's black,
yeah.
the odds of the black guy getting found guilty of that crime versus the white guy.
But this is higher stakes.
Yeah, minimum sentencing, which we just watched a documentary about that. That was sad. The sentence. Yeah, minimum sentencing's dicey.
Yeah. Jerry said 2 million people are incarcerated right now. In 2016, the Prison Policy Initiative estimated that in the United States, about 2,298,300 people were incarcerated.
It's almost 1 in 100. It's almost 1% of our population is behind bars.
Yeah. Yikes. Oh, and then you said it's $30,000 a year to keep someone behind bars. According to the Vera Institute of Justice, incarceration costs an average of more than $31,000 per inmate per year nationwide. In some states, it's as much as $60,000.
Yeah, I think in California and New York, it's
higher.
really expensive. Yeah.
Yeah. And we talked about the percentage of violent crime versus drug offenses. And I did pull up a visual aid
from The Onion,
from prisonpolicy.org. In state prisons, violent crime is more, which was interesting to me.
Meaning it was it was the majority of people incarcerated have committed a violent crime.
crimes.
Do you know what percentage?
Well, we could do it.
Some quick math? I'd love to.
You want to?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. State prisons, 1,316,000. That's the pool.
1,316,000. 1.3 million.
Sure. Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Violent crimes are 718,000 of those.
Okay. So that's about 65%.
Wow. That was fast.
Yeah.
That was really
I
fast.
feel semi-confident with that estimation.
I
Yeah.
can't check you on it without pulling out my phone and doing that. So sure. Drug.
Really quick, just for fun, because it takes 1 second. So it was
718.
718,000.
Uh-huh.
Okay, divided by 1.3 million, 55%.
Okay.
Okay, so I was off by 10 points.
That's all
Not
right.
very good, but not terrible either.
No, that was good. And then drug offenses are 200,000.
Okay, so that's about 18% or something.
Okay. So that was interesting because we had said violent crime was not, and that's also state prison.
Yeah, federal has got way more, I
It's
think.
definitely more. In the convicted category for federal prisons, drugs are 82,000 and violent is 13.
Okay, there we go.
Yeah.
That's a big gap
Exactly. Anyway, so yeah. Interesting, right?
Yeah, 5 times as many drug offenders in federal prison than violent crime.
And again, people would probably say like, well, there's more people doing bad drugs. Like they wouldn't see a problem with it. They would just say like,
Yeah, that
there's
drug.
a big drug problem here.
Yeah, and people need to be in prison.
Right.
And that's horseshit.
Not
That's not how you
true.
deal with a drug problem.
Exactly.
Yeah. You don't deal with medical issues by incarcerating people.
Yeah, I agree. Speaking of that, there's Serial season 3 is so good.
Isn't season 3 S-Town?
No.
That's its own.
That was
feed.
its own
Oh.
thing. Serial season 3 came out maybe a month and a half ago. Each episode is about some element of the Cleveland, I want to say. Cleveland court system.
Okay.
So like first episode was about a case, and then the second episode was about one of the judges in that system. Really good.
Is it like More Perfect? My favorite.
It's kind of like More
podcast?
Perfect.
I
Yeah,
love
a
that
little
stuff.
bit.
And it's spelled SERIAL.
IAL.
Because a lot of people on Twitter will go, I looked for cereal, CER.
Oh,
Because we talk about it kind of a
short
lot.
for serialized.
Yeah. Well, what we're recommending is short for serialized.
Yeah.
The other version's breakfast cereal.
What if we
cereal
were talking
grains.
about
Show
how
called
much we love to podcast about breakfast cereal?
It's just cereal
start
grains
one?
in general. Really, you could, because there was that great movie about Kellogg in Battle Creek, Michigan, where most of the breakfast cereals are made.
Yeah.
And he had some weird health retreat back then, and he was obsessed with the consistency of your poop, your bowel movement. That's why he has all of his medical prescriptions involved evaluating your stool and then trying to get it to be a certain consistency. Matthew Broderick was in it.
Due to the cereal?
It was Sir Anthony Hopkins and Matthew Broderick. It was a pretty interesting movie. So it makes me think you actually could do one
All right, let's do one.
on
Dibs.
Kellogg. I bet there's a murder too. And anytime you've got like a family empire, I bet there's a murder.
Always, yeah.
Always.
Oh, Jerry told a really powerful anecdote during this episode, talking about burden of proof. A case, the judge came down at the beginning of the trial, went and shook the defendant's hand. Remember this? And he said,
humanizing him.
yeah, he said, ladies and gentlemen, I just shook hands with an innocent man.
Ugh, it's so cool.
So good.
Yeah.
It should be required.
Mm-hmm. Now, again, if you're the family member of a murder victim,
I know.
I'm sure you feel otherwise, and I too would feel that way. But we, as a collective, have to make better decisions, and that is the system works best when everyone's presumed innocent.
Yeah. Yep. Also, normcore was not invented after Jerry and Dean.
It wasn't.
No,
That's a bummer.
not at all.
I would love to think that they started a fashion movement.
I know you basically said that, but
I
they
did, yeah.
didn't.
I think this will be a fact I ignore. I still,
No.
yeah, I really like
Makes me
it.
upset when you do that.
It does.
Yeah, for real.
Well, but listen, I concede that you're right, but it's so fun thinking those two cutie pies started a fashion movement.
I know, it
It's
just
sometimes
makes me-
fairy tales. I believe in fairy tale. You know, you can.
No, you can't, because
Okay.
this is indicative of a larger problem in the world that happens, where people want to believe things even though they hear the truth, but they don't want to believe that truth.
Confirmation bias.
So normcore is not invented by Jerry and Dean, although they do fit that mold very nicely.
Very nicely.
you can still
maybe the
say-
two best examples of normcore.
Well, most people say Seinfeld is the best example. That's
He's
like
pretty good,
That's
yeah.
the epitome. Seinfeld when he was.
Although
on
that's not
Seinfeld.
entirely true, because in context, he was actually dressing semi-hip.
Back then.
Yeah, back
Was it?
then. Yeah, it wasn't
Yeah.
like you noticed, oh, what's this guy doing? Whereas with Jerry and Dean, you were like, oh, you were really aware of that they were in normcore.
Well, no, I totally disagree. I think it's exactly the same. They're just wearing clothes that are completely average
Yeah.
and not sticking out.
Okay. The bottom line is I love both those guys, and I loved how they dressed. And I thought it was like, that. I looked at it and I was like, that's what a person should think. Like, who gives a flying fuck what's
Exactly.
covering my genitalia? Let's just get on with the important business of
Except
saving.
MeUndies.
With the exception of MeUndies,
We
you
care
should
about
always be
that.
pampering yourself with.
Right. That's it.
That's it?
Yeah.
Went out on the normcore. Way to save the best
I'll
for
tell
last.
everyone, I'll be honest about it, that there was a fact in there about ballistics and only 30 or 40% have to match. And I just couldn't find that statistic. I asked my aunt, who's a lawyer, and she didn't respond on my email. So
Well.
there's no way for me to know. I'm sorry.
Wow. That sounds unlike her. You get lost in the
know.
shuffle, or she was just like, I can't be an endless source of.
Maybe.
Maybe she's sick of it.
Probably.
What if every time she saw a commercial on TV, she'd text you, hey, I'm just watching this commercial for Pizza Hut. You know a lot about commercials. Do you think they were at a Pizza Hut or that was a set?
I know. I do feel bad. But this is part of my job.
By the way, we saw your other commercial while we were on our lovers retreat. We saw your IBM commercial.
Oh,
And we
really?
squealed with joy.
You did.
We did.
That's
yeah.
so cute.
Yeah, it starts the commercial, and you always want to put your best foot forward, which in this case was Manica Padman.
That's nice.
Yeah, it was great, and it was on the World Series.
Really?
You keep ending up in all these big playoff games because you were in a bunch of football games. Dang, girl, time to go shopping for some normcore. Normcore.
Stop doing that with your fingers.
That's how you pack dip in junior high.
Really? What do you mean? Where does it go? I don't understand.
Well, you take the can, you put it between your fingers, and then you tap on the top of the can. It drives all the dip into the corner of the can, and then it's nice and dense when you put a pinch between your cheek and gum.
Oh.
So you can do it without the can. Like that, you practice, and it's what turds do, like me. Like when I was younger, that was a cool thing you could do.
Yeah, you're
Jesus
cool.
Christ. All right, I love you.
I love you.